just lose track of time. Thank God I found you. Promise to love you forever and ever. No sickness and health.
Welcome back to Christ and Culture. This episode is going to be pretty interesting in light of Black History Month. We're going to attack the subject of Christianity and racism in Christianity. So, with that, just sit back, buckle up, do whatever you got to do. Go get you your popcorn, your ice cream, whatever you need, your Coca-Cola, whatever. Water. And just get ready. Your water. Yeah, you get your water too. But we're going to start off with these introductions, and they're going to be a little bit different this time.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Alvona. I grew up in Boston in a very diverse community. I'm ethnically Jamaican, so we also have the Caribbean community aspect that I'll be bringing to this conversation.
Nicole?
Hi, I'm Nicole Chung. I'm from San Diego, California, so I'm going to bring a more local perspective.
And what is local?
And local, we're shot here in San Diego, and I was born and raised here, so San Diego, California. Okay.
Well, name's Jelani. Born and raised here, so I'll also be bringing the local
and the youth.
Also.
And the youth. Like a younger, you're dealing with people that's approaching 40. You ain't even 30. So, and the youth. And then we have an off voice, an off camera voice. And Jessica, she's from San Diego as well, and she is not invented yet. Hopefully, what you doing?
Did I just say?
And she also grew up here in San Diego, and of course y'all know who it is. It's the one and only. It's me, born and reared, Selma, Alabama. Went to high school, 99.9% black, baby. Yeah, Selma to Montgomery, where I'm from. And with that, we're going to get into it. But, so let's just start off with the question that I posed, can you really be a true follower of Christ and love God and be racist? Yeah. What we going to say? Huh? What you say?
You can't be a true follower of Christ and be racist. It's impossible because it's not the characteristic of God. When you think of God, God, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. You go down the whole storyline, it was just man and woman. It was just the human race. Mm-hmm. And that was that. The bottom line. And even later on in scripture, God is all about we are from him. We are royalty. We are all are. He doesn't say if you're white, you're from royalty. He's saying we are, if our identity is in Christ, which all of us have that opportunity, as soon as whether we accept it or not, that is our identity, bottom line. And so if that's our identity, which is what he said is, then we are all just a human being, we are all royalty, and that is the bottom line. And because of that, we are all in the same boat. We are all sinners. We all are in need of grace, and that's the bottom line. We have different.
Stone Cold said so.
Yeah, we got different skin tones. We ain't blind. We ain't got different skin tones. But at the end of the day, God still treats all of us the same.
Yeah.
And so you just can't claim that you're a Christian, but you are racist towards others. You can't truly claim it. We all fall short, at times, but you can't truly claim and profess the name of God, and you're out here hating whatever race that you might hate and treat them differently.
So here's the other piece, though. How many people do you know may not prefer other ethnicities and don't call themselves racist? Because I've been around Caucasian Christians that are very much set in their ways, and they don't think that they're racist, but there's not one black person in their congregation. And on top of that, they don't allow their maybe they don't allow their kids to play with other black kids. Maybe it's because they don't live in the black neighborhood. And they would say stuff like, I would never live in that neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But they're Christians.
I get it.
Oh yeah, okay.
And it may not be a Caucasian. I know.
No, that's not even what I was gonna
Okay.
I was gonna say there's a difference between being racist and being biased against something. So, not saying these people you talk to may not be racist,
So go with the definition.
but
of racism.
what you are saying says more bias
True.
than racism because you want the
Yeah,
definition.
go with
Hold
the
on, man, I'm gonna
definition.
give y'all this definition. That's
So
the
people
young-
understand what's.
That's what the
two.
young Padawan wants. Got it. All right. For y'all at home, the definition of racism is, as a noun, the prejudice that members of one race are intrinsically superior. I got it right first try. I was struggling, y'all, with that word earlier. Superior to members of other races. So, that's
And
what
set
racism
up
is.
systems to support it. We have
Of course,
to have
of
the
course it
systems.
is.
Right, absolutely.
But it's just saying that basically racism means that you feel like your race is superior to any
Hold
other
on, but in
race.
this case that Nicole had mentioned,
Yeah.
we can say the bias would be that they don't have anyone of another culture around them. But then the system is when they say, oh, I would never live in that neighborhood because one, they have the option not to.
That.
They have the systemic evolution of economic
Yes.
power and economic freedom to live and choose where they live and choose where their money and their dollars go to, whereas historically African Americans in this country have not. So that's where the racism part would come in if she wanted to
That's exactly-
make that argument.
That's-
I'm not saying that she has to, but
No, that's the argument.
Here's the deal. Where am I from? Selma,
Selma.
Alabama. As of right now, I think it's like 80+% black and white, right?
Right.
The white people in Selma live in the same neighborhoods as black people, and I'm not going to say that they not racist. And they have the choice to live there. They can choose, but Selma is a very low cost of living type of deal. So, in my opinion, these, like the people in your scenario, I really feel like ignorance is bliss. And to me, the way I see it is, there's a difference between it being ignorant to something and being racist towards it. So, if the people that you in your scenario have never had the opportunity to interact with anyone of a different race, because let's just say they grew up in Utah, and we know Utah is,
there's black folks in Utah.
but it's pretty pale in Utah. All right, pretty pale. All right. But let's just say, like, I guess what I'm saying, in Utah, you're gonna be more likely to see neighborhoods that are literally 100% white than you are in California, Alabama, or anywhere. Even in Boston, you're gonna be less likely to see those type of neighborhoods than you are in Utah.
So it's why here is
It's
it's
more
a culture.
homogeneous.
It's a culture, and where you live in depends on if you kind of get put in that scenario.
Because like me being in the Navy, I've come across a number of white people that have never interacted with a black person until they joined the Navy.
Right.
Never.
Right.
And they love black people, they love Asian people, but they had never had the opportunity, and all they knew was what they had heard, what they had learned.
So I have a
So they were
question.
just ignorant.
So I have a question, and it goes to your question, kind of. Can you be a Christian and say with power, Black Lives Matter? You shouldn't be saying Black Lives Matter. You should be saying all lives matter, and hold to that and cannot get past that. A, does that make you racist?
So
It's
let me hit A.
Wait.
Okay.
Cause what she said off camera deals with A.
Okay.
And that's remember we were talking about culture, and she was like, you want to hold on to. So when people say, or when we say Black Lives Matter,
Right.
people that aren't black probably feel left out. But that is when they need to look at it in a different lens, as you said, as Jessica said. look at it in a different lens as why do I feel some type of way when they say Black Lives Matter versus when I say all lives matter. You get what I mean? So
no,
it's,
I get what you're saying.
So I mean, I don't necessarily. I think when people say all lives matter, in my mind, that meter is doing this. Like if you were non-racist, and in my mind, and then I say Black Lives Matter, you're like, well, don't all. Okay, now the meter starts to do this because now me personally, I'm gonna start asking those hard questions to really see.
So the definition, can we get the definition one more time?
When you
racist.
Now I'm paraphrasing, but
yeah.
basically when one person of one race feels like they are intrinsically superior to someone of another race based on their race.
So now your mindset is superior to mine because you think all lives matter when the entire world and all of this time, Black lives are still dealing with A, B, C, D, and E, and that's something you don't even have to worry about. So when that question comes, you can at rip say,
okay,
all lives should matter. That is your privilege.
So okay, check this.
Sorry, I didn't think
it. Let me go ahead and all right. So let's take this person that grew up in poverty. That's white. They grew up in poverty, and you know what I'm saying. They may not have grown up with black people, but they grew up in poverty, and they may have had bad run-ins with the police. They may have had white friends killed by the police because as much as the news sensationalizes it, other races get killed by cops too. They do. So if I'm a white person from a poverty-stricken area, and I have a friend who's white as well, and say to the same thing that happened to Eric Gardner happened to my white friend, but it didn't get on CNN. It didn't make it to Fox News. It didn't make it to MSNBC. And you come up to me saying, Black Lives Matter. Wait a minute. My childhood friends had the same thing happen. All lives matter. Does that make me racist? Or does that make me feel like you don't understand my struggle? You're only focused on your struggle.
Are you asking us to side and to empathize with this nation's oppressor at the moment?
What I'm asking you to do, what I'm asking you and all people who consider themselves to be Christian and really love God is to remove let's take the whole idea of like race out of it. Because I now truly believe, that there's only one race. We're just different hues of the same race. So like Jelani said earlier, in the beginning it didn't say God created the black man and the black woman. It just said God created man and then woman. Right? So all I want to do is get race out. And this is not just with black people. This is with the oppressors as well, because they oppress because they think that their fair skin means something. And it doesn't. Because, I mean, we literally, in history, one guy said a white skull meant that they had bigger, like they were smarter because the skull was white, which is the dumbest thing. Because if I take a black person's skull and like a head and let it deteriorate until it gets to the skull, it'll be white. Right. But that was literally one of the reasonings behind white people being superior because of they saw a white skull. But I'm not saying side with him. I'm saying side with God. I just truly believe you can't say I love God. Because these same people that we are quote unquote hating because that, like I said, that all lives matter person may not be racist. They may literally just be ignorant. And when this world comes to an end and we chilling in heaven, we gonna see that same person we thought was a racist. Is that not the case that can happen?
No, I agree that can happen, but it's 2023.
Yeah.
If you thought all lives mattered in 2020 and you have not done due diligence to see what that actually means, that's not just being ignorant. That's you choosing to stand on your own word, which is not.
But ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss. As long as I'm ignorant.
You can't use the same.
As long as I'm ignorant, I'm happy. And everybody in this room is gonna choose happiness.
But if you're if you're operating and you have the power.
But no, because if
saying?
you're a Christian,
That's a fact.
Yeah.
right?
That-
So
now-
to go back to your original question, can Christians be racist? Absolutely yes. That's my response. Now, can someone who's striving to the ideals of a godlike life and trying to mirror God's likeness on earth be racist? No.
Well,
Right,
let me
because
move
then
on first.
you're trying, you're striving,
you.
right?
I got
But
you.
anyone can. People say they're Catholic and they go to church twice a year. People say that they're Christian and never step foot in church. Like, you can definitely go to church every single Saturday, every single Sunday, and still be racist. You can still definitely benefit
straight
from
to
all the
hell.
systems. You can still, yeah, exactly. Like, you can be a car in the garage and never go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I say yes to answer that question.
Yeah.
But then we do also have to consider, okay, you're looking at the human race in its entirety. We have to also look at sin as a sin problem. So if you look at race as a sin problem, it's like, so can someone be delivered from racism? And would you believe them if they had?
That's,
in
Can
your
someone
action.
be?
that's the thing.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what do you guys think about that?
I definitely think you can be delivered from being
Oh.
racist.
Yeah, it's,
Well, wholeheartedly.
it's all about the action of it. I mean, I'm sure I can't even think. I'm sure there's somebody out there, but
I'll give you an example.
give me an example. I know there's someone. I just can't think of them. That
Okay, so
That never seen black people.
I've had a friend. I have a friend. She's married to a black man. She is Peruvian and maybe Puerto Rican.
Afro Latina.
Ask her, and no shade to her, but ask her. She understands that there could be some African descent, but many times and oftentimes they do not. If you had asked her 6 months to a year ago if she had black in her, she'd be like, no, I'm Peruvian and I'm whatever. Because historically,
Yeah, that was part
That's
of
the thing.
the
So-
colonization.
that part. So, but her husband is black, her children are presenting as black. One of her sons looks more Hispanic than black, but the other son essentially is my tone, but has like
more black
more
features.
black, like exactly. And then her little girl looks like essentially looks like me, but they cannot pass as anything other than black. When all of this stuff happened in 2020, I don't necessarily think that she got it in that moment. However, she took some classes. She's a social work major, master's in social work. It wasn't until she took a class that really broke down who we are and our struggles and some of the other stuff that she like had to sit there and say like, dang, this whole time, Nicole, you're talking to me and I'm kind of like, but we're Christians. And then finally it hit me like, dang, y'all really do have a whole different struggle than what I have. Like in my son, and she knew this a little bit because her son, like there have been some things that have gone on without telling too much of their story that he cannot, like he can get in trouble just like any other black male can get in trouble. And it's the grace of God that she sees that he has been able to get through that stuff unscathed, if that makes sense. But not because of the color of his skin. And she is now really conscious of that, and the way that she interacts is different now. I think that is, and I can't say because she's not necessarily the race, ethnicity, right? That's like has the power. But sometimes your mindset, like when you are not black like we are, your mindset is very much
Different.
They can say stuff like, oh, just black people deal with that, or they can remove themselves from that situation. She now knows because of her
But we
children,
have the
she can
same
no
thing.
longer.
Well,
Yeah, I was gonna say we have the same thing being first gen here, and you hear it from Caribbean folks, you hear it from African folks, you hear it from Asian folks, like literally everybody except African Americans, born and rooted in this country, because there is still a divisiveness and an idea that we're not like them. Right,
Is
and
that
it's
racism?
until you do. No,
So
that's
in
not
that-
the
hold
racism.
on,
But I'm
hold
just
on.
saying in terms of the education,
No,
because
but
when it
that's-
comes to the
that's what you
education,
asked.
Hold on, I do think when it comes to that part, I do think that just being somebody who like is third, fourth generation, like American.
Yeah.
I do think that people that come from other countries into America, like feel like they're superior, even though they're black, they're superior to
Right.
the
Yeah,
American black.
Without the historical
Yeah.
context,
They feel like
that
they're
happens
superior
a lot,
to
and that's where the
the American
education
black.
comes
And
in.
I feel like that part is
and
racist.
especially if you come in here,
Yeah.
but it's still not racist for them
It's more
because once
culturalistic.
you come into this country, they don't
You
care
black,
whether
you
you're
black,
from
right.
Nigeria, Ghana, Jamaica, even the Dominicans, like they'll come here.
Yeah.
It does not matter. Once
Right.
you're here, you are
No, I
black.
agree.
They just consider
Yeah.
you African American, and you will be
Absolutely.
treated as such, and very quickly realize like, hey,
Unless
even
you
though
got
in
a
my
good
head I
point.
thought we were different, in this country we're the same.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, there was a period, I think it was during 2020, when they were issuing those travel advisories. You know, like normally if there's civil
to the
unrest,
S-hole country.
yeah, they were issuing
what the
travel
president called it?
advisories to the African countries. Like,
Yeah.
yo, it's not safe for you guys
Yes.
to go to America right
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, so.
Oh,
there is-
yeah.
Yeah, there's that aspect of it, but in terms of, striving to be Christians, right, and striving for a more ideal life and idealized society, it's like,
Right.
what do you think about, like, if you get to heaven and it's segregated?
I mean, if I get to heaven and it's segregated, I'd be like, well, I guess they was right down there. I guess they got it right and I was wrong. Appreciate you, God, for forgiving me for my ignorance.
But because if you only grew up in 99% and that's all you know, say you never came
Never
out of
came
it,
down
you
here.
never went.
Oh, yeah.
So for you, like, you go into a multi-cultural,
Oh, the first time I went to college.
interracial heaven
When I went
would
to
be
college,
kind of confusing.
Yeah,
Like-
for sure.
Yeah.
Have
For
y'all
sure.
thought about that? Like, what
But
would heaven be?
I guess when I say because I mean when I say Christian, can you be Christian? I'm thinking of like we brought up the definition of racism.
Mm-hmm.
To be Christian means to be Christ-like. Like when you say that you're a Christian, you telling people I'm Christ-like, and if I'm Christ-like, I can't. That's when I say that's what that question. Can you be Christian,
But-
like a true Christian, and be racist?
But-
That's why. Because I remember you drew a line like, yes, you can be Christian and be racist.
But I want to go back to my friend because you're like, is that racist? Here's the thing: when you operate by a Eurocentric lens, because you think that you're not the same.
But that's a level of naivety over racism, though, right? Like, so you got people that grew like, okay, we'll take the person that grew up, that's black, was adopted into a white family. I'm talking about this happened at a very young age, maybe 2 or 3. They're still developing a personality. And then they spend their whole life in a white neighborhood, because the white people in that neighborhood have now galvanized themselves around this black child. They protect this black child as a village together from the things. Then they go out on their own.
And that is privilege in
So
itself.
that gives you a certain, because the word privilege, because I remember when privilege was first a thing, people would be angry when you say, I'm privileged. I'm not privileged. But it's more of,
It's the voice in the hand.
I'm not privileged. I worked hard. As if I didn't, but the thing is, privilege is just, how I see it, is just a level of naivety or ignorance. So that the privilege that you have is that you can be naive to a certain thing. Because, like I said, growing up in Selma, mostly like black, I never had the opportunity. Like I got a really good friend. He's one of my groomsmen in my upcoming wedding, named Ty. His father's black, his mother's white. And I mean, he educated me a lot, but I used to call him a mulatto, not knowing that was a derogatory term, because I'm from Alabama. We say things like that. But anyway, I used to tell him, like, you have enjoyed a certain level of freedom that I haven't, because he has had the opportunity for people to think he was a tan white person. Versus me, ain't nobody confusing me with a tan nothing. You know what I'm saying? So in that aspect, there's a certain level of freedom. Like I can walk into, you can feel like you can walk into certain places and people be like, yeah, he white. But the whole time he really, really black. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I mean when I say that. Like when it's privilege, I think privilege is ignorance and naivety like together, because you are so naive because you grew up in this place where it was, the roses didn't smell like boo-boo. You know what I'm saying? And you were able to matriculate down a line, a smooth line, really no obstacles.
So with that being said, I'm going to use your term of privilege, because I consider privilege a little bit differently. But in terms of what you just said, then you also were privileged. Right?
I don't deny it.
Racism in the church.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
we were talking about racism in Christianity, but racism in the church. Yeah, so you have a different privilege of having a whole different experience.
I wholeheartedly do. Talking with this group that I'm in here with, I have a number of privileges that you guys don't have. Like, I grew up in an all-black church. Really, my first church I went to was a family church. My dad's family ran that church, so I went to that church. And then the church, after I became a teenager, was a Black Baptist church. And then I went to a Black Kojic church. So I've always been in a black church. But the privilege that I have had that you guys didn't have, and probably you two, did you go to Oakwood?
No.
You two didn't get it until you went to Oakwood, was I went to a 99.9% black school, taught by like 70% black teachers.
Yeah.
So I really have a privilege that in Southern California.
Whereas I can count my black teachers.
Yeah. And I hate when people do this and be like, when they say white people are black. But I got a teacher named Miss Spivey. She was my 11th grade history teacher. Only thing white about her was her skin tone. She was the one put me on like these different abolitionists or these people that stood against racism, like the Marcus Garvey. Like, I was ignorant to that.
And for me, I really subscribe to people that, and I'm not saying you all have to be teachers like her, but I think when you are of a different ethnicity and you say that you're a Christian, you should be an activist.
Oh yeah.
You should be saying the things that other people can't say. You should be promoting a lifestyle that says Black Lives Matter and be able to debate with anybody why that's important, because you understand in your privilege what it is that you should be doing.
Hold on now. I got you. I'm finna go take it. I'm finna drive that knife a little bit. I'm finna drive it a little bit more. Lord. Because 4 of us in this room, and hopefully one day, if you make that choice, Adventists should be
gonna mention that.
standing in opposition. Like, if you consider yourself an Adventist, no one should ever hear you say all lives matter, especially when the Millerism faith was built on the abolitionist movement.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But that's history, and not everyone knows that.
So real quick, just give the Millerism, just so
because people won't know.
Yeah, because that's.
Oh, so I don't know. Like, I just did a little bit of research, and I just know that how it works in my mind before we were called.
Because Miller was one of the founders of the Adventist Church.
Yes.
Look at that. My mom didn't waste her money. I'm gonna tell you why. I don't know much, but Miller was the start. It was the founders. It was Miller and a bunch of others.
And it was the great
disappointment, whatever.
Separated.
Yeah. And pretty much, because I don't know much, you might know more than me, but pretty much after the Great Disappointment and stuff, they started the Adventist Church. And so, like he was just saying, it's like it started with the Miller movement, and it kind of like progressed. And so you go in detail about just how they.
Well, I'm just to keep it on today's topic, and that's dealing with race. Just if you look at the Millerites and the Adventists that have been a part of either civil rights or abolition of the abolitionist movement, Sojourner Truth was a Millerite. She said she started to separate herself after the Great Disappointment, but she was a Millerite. And then later on an Adventist. Malcolm X grew up because of his mother as an Adventist, and his mother was a civil rights activist in her own right. So just like if I remember somebody made reference to this, and I think it was they made reference to an E.E. Cleveland sermon where he said, if you black and you celebrating Sunday or you observing Sunday, that's the white man's day. So that is just to say, like, because I know I've encountered a few people that look like me that be like, Adventism is a cult, so forth and so on, that type of stuff. But they go to church on Sundays, and we all know people that go to church on Sundays will still they'll still make it to heaven, because it'll come that time when it'll be like, come on up out of there. So they'll get the opportunity. But I say all that to say that Adventists in America, the Adventist church is the most diverse church in America. It has the biggest mixture between black, white, Asian, and other race. Like, it has the biggest mix. Even more than the Catholic Church. Even more than Kojic Church. Even more than the Southern Baptist. Like, it is the most diverse church in America. So, and it's so crazy to say that our church is the most diverse when it has its own issues with race inside. But that's neither here nor there. It's just, this is kind of, to y'all, this is kind of my Suge Knight moment. You know what I'm saying? Come to death row. You know what I'm saying?
Night moment. What is going on?
I wonder when you say, like,
The man's a murderer.
No, but before you were born, you did a
Hold
come
on,
to death row.
off camera
I
voice.
was just gonna say, I wonder when thinking about it being the most diverse church in America, I wonder if those churches are still segregated. Because whenever I go to an Adventist church, it's either all black or all white or all something. I've never
All
seen.
Korean, all Filipino.
No, it's
all-
very-
I've never seen like an Adventist church, and I don't know, like, I'm not Adventist, so I don't know. I haven't been to a lot of
In
services,
San Diego.
but
Claremont Mesa.
La Mesa.
but I'm
Claremont
curious.
Mesa.
MPV.
I'm curious as to like what that looks like across the country.
It looks like
segregated.
you're organization.
It's very very segregated. It's like even hard to say because I have the experience. We have the experience of going to church, Adventist church in Alabama.
Oh,
and
well,
here.
listen, brother.
Yeah.
And so Adventist churches in Alabama are 99% black. I'm
You gonna
sure
beat
there's
that.
a couple other ones that
Yeah, you
are
gonna beat
predominantly
that.
white.
Right.
But then you come here, it's very segregated. There are the black churches, the Mexican churches,
Oh, yeah.
The
the
Filipino
Asians,
churches.
and then you have the couple that are
Like the Claremont
They're
Mesas, the
Spanish.
Mesas.
They're mixed.
Yeah.
And it's just like to be honest, like it's crazy to think about, but I don't even know why that is. It's like kind of
Oh, I know.
I know exactly about it.
Right.
But I was gonna say before you say that, like growing up in Boston, they definitely had the segregated churches, but there was also the collaborative, multiracial church. But even in that, it was still of a
That's a little bit-
Europeanization,
yeah.
cultural worship style.
Yeah.
So it was still a little
Yeah.
different in
Yeah.
terms
Amazing,
of different worship styles. But I've seen it, and there have definitely been especially when we do conferences.
It's not here. I'm sorry.
Especially when we do like conferences and stuff and you get everyone together. There's sometimes, especially being someone that's usually on a praise team and we're actually able to look out into the audience, there are some times when I'm almost moved to tears and I'm like, this might be what heaven looks like, because you see all the races, you see all the generations, you see different cultures, and it's not a common thing, but on the times that it's happened, it's been such a beautiful thing because we're all at the time elevating our praises to God, to the
Yeah.
Most High.
yeah, for
And
sure.
and I would even say, going back to what Oscar was saying about even with the history of Seventh-day Adventism being founded on like
The
the idea of getting rid of that segregation.
It was slavery at the time. They were getting rid of
that
slavery.
getting rid of that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that someone who is Adventist or someone who is black, even supporting of black people, can't say all lives matter. Because at the end of the day, if it's about God and it's about like loving people, then I think you can say both. You can recognize that Black Lives Matter. I think the problem people have with All Lives Matter is that it was a response
to Black Lives Matter.
Matter. And it doesn't make it less true.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I think the idea of where it came from messes up what the point of it is.
Yes.
But I think that if you get to the root of it, which is where, like, even as Christians, we have to get to the root of, like, it's not about the denomination, it's not about, like, whether you go to white church, black church, whatever, it's about the root, right? So it's kind of like you can love all people, you can support as heavy and as hard as we go for Black Lives Matter, because I believe Black Lives Matter. I should go for my Asian brothers and sisters who are dealing with their own struggles. And my other people, and even though I live in America, who's to say, like, I shouldn't love my American people more than I love my people who don't live here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So and it's kind of like when we get to heaven, like, if all my prayers are only for the people I know and the people who look like me, then that's void.
Yeah.
It should be for everyone, you know?
But what the All Lives Matter people didn't hear because it wasn't said with Black Lives Matter, it wasn't Black Lives Matter more than white. Asian,
Right.
It literally was
was
a
a-
Black Lives Matters too.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
It was
at
the
that point
ignorance that
in
you're talking
time, it was happening pretty often
Exactly.
where someone was dying brutally at the hands of a
Definitely.
law enforcement individual. So what people didn't get, and I think I'm telling you, that man, that doggone, that roaring lion, that serpent, he's slicker than a can of oil.
Right.
He's slicker than a can of oil because he's always going to find a way to create confusion, because we know Babylon is confusion. And he's always going to find a way to separate.
Right.
Because as long as you're separated, you can't come together and worship like God as we should, right?
Exactly.
And I want to go to the segregated part because
Okay.
my parents divorced when I was 8, and my mom decided she was going to go to another church. It was Bonita, in case y'all know. It's a more, they actually have a diverse, like we weren't the only black family, and then there wasn't just white families. There were all kind of, but they did run their church very Eurocentrically. Does that sound good, Eurocentrically?
You can say what it
The
is. They
first
ran it
Sunday
white.
I went, I said, Mom, can we go back to church? And it wasn't because, and my school friends were there. Like, I saw my friends, my classmates that were black. But I know the way that I prefer to worship.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to, y'all could be Hispanic up there singing the praises with the drums and all the things that we do. Because that's my preference. So I think when it comes to Adventist and being segregated, the only reason why it matters to me is financially. Because if I see, and we talked about this, and maybe we'll get into it later, but if I'm seeing a Caucasian church or Hispanic church that has more financially and all the money is going to one pot, and we're sitting here in the hood and we don't have the things that we need to have, but it's supposed to be spread, which you explain, and we won't explain here because it's a whole big story. That's the only reason why it matters to me, because at the end of the day, we're not getting the same treatment by like the conference.
That was the entire basis of integration, though, because before integrationists, there was separate but equal.
Yeah, that's
and
brown
that
and gold.
would have been sustainable
Classy
if it were actually equal, but it never was, and it was never designed to be. So that's when integration became the goal, and all these different methods of integration were a factor. But coming back to it, and just thinking about our days and what we have to do in our day and what our focus is, if we're trying to be more godlike and we're trying to be more followers of Christ, we honestly have to put your focus on it, because wherever your focus is, that is what you're going to be thinking about throughout the day. So there are a lot of factors that are happening, and there are things that we should not be ignorant to by any means, right? And that goes for all the different races and struggles, because as a transplant to San Diego, I remember when I got here and I was like, whoa, they treat the Mexicans like the black people back east. And that was just a whole new thing. And I have some Mexican friends that were like able to school me on some of the stuff that was going on out here. And I was like, whoa, like, okay. I was like, so how you guys feel? That's how black folk feel on the East Coast, you know? And just knowing that there's a different struggle and that we have to work within it, but also progress from out of it. So our generation has the responsibility of educating the next generation below us so that things are not the same. Because unfortunately, especially with the rampantness of social media, the stuff that these kids are putting out is just as racist, if not more so, than the stuff of the great grandparents.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, and it's our generation that should have fixed that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree.
Well, I mean, hold on.
Hey, say what you got to
Well, I
say.
think-
Like, if we were
I only
really
got-
trying not to be racist in Christianity.
My only thing was when you said our generation should have been the people to figure. Hold up now.
To help.
Okay.
The ones who have children.
Okay,
The ones
cool,
who have
cool,
children.
cool, okay.
And as a community.
I can take that. I can take that.
No, but as a community, because we were
Yeah.
even just talking about something like just in terms of the church eldership, and I'm like, when I think back to it, I'm like, okay, those who are in their 30s were the ones who are mainly the ones that we looked up to when we were kids.
Yeah.
And so are the kids nowadays looking up to us like that? Are we providing that same kind of resource? Are we passing down the information that's been generationally inscribed into us to the next generation so that they know what has happened and so that we don't repeat the not just the cycles, but don't repeat the follies of our past, but also know what has happened. So when things happen in this generation, you're not surprised by it.
I heard a little kid at church say they wanted to be like Alvana when they grow up. So
Oh, please.
yeah.
Well, great kid. Good job. But I don't believe that.
No, but you said when you said the thing about our generation, and because we're in Black History Month and we are talking about race, and like I told everybody before we started to record about like my grandfather. I have a grandfather, my mom's dad. He was the first person in my family to be literally born free, and he was born in 1900. So, and we'll close out and we can get our outros after this. For everybody that's watching, that feels like racism was so long ago that we should get over it. That happened so long ago or whatever. My granddad, not my great granddad, not his father, but my grandfather was the first person in my bloodline on my mom's side to be born free. And he was born in 1900. My mother, who was born in the 50s, had the opportunity to sit at elders' feet and hear stories. My mother had the opportunity to hear stories about how these people were sold. I mean, so let's just not get, let's kill the idea that slavery was so long ago. And I heard Chris Rock say in an interview or in a whatever that what did he say? Jesus,
Help him.
please. Anyway, he was talking about how really bad it was with slavery didn't end with the Emancipation Proclamation. Slavery ended in the 70s, technically, when they abolished Jim Crow. Because everything in Jim Crow was a means of continuing slavery. So, do your research, look up the Millerite movement, look up Adventism and how all the civil rights people in Adventism, and because Jess is Seventh-day Baptist?
Non-denominational.
Non-denomination, Seventh-day non. Anyway, I thought you were Baptist. I'm wrong. But Seventh-day, the reason there was a Seventh-day Baptist that actually brought Miller to observing the Sabbath. You know, just a did you know. But with that, we're going to go ahead and close it out. Jess, you can shoot, they can't see you, but you can shoot yourself, shout out your social, whatever you want to do. Jess, all right, go ahead.
All right, I just encourage everyone to really read and have a better understanding of not only where we are now, but where we have been in the past so that we know where we're going in the future.
I concur with her.
I say, really take the time to really see other views, other races. You know, it's not just the African American race. There's the Hispanic people are dealing with stuff. We are all dealing with just different things. I think it's important to try to make yourself self-aware so that you're not running into a lot of the issues that we have talked about today. So it's just to be mindful and just to take action.
Yeah. Yeah. What they all said. And we don't normally say this, but it's gonna be a part of the ending from here on out. Like, subscribe,
comment,
and share. Christ and Culture, we'll catch you here next month.
Peace.
Your love, it tastes so sweet. There's nothing like it. There's nothing that compares to the way I feel when I'm lost inside you. I just lose track.